Hi folks, today we're going to do the first part of the Kaboom cowl here. I'll just move this out of the way and we'll get started. So using your colour one, which is red in this case for me, we are going to start with a magic circle, or you can chain 4 and join that chain 4 into a loop if you like instead. I like to start with a magic circle. I have a YouTube video explaining this all that you can find quite easily. So our first round is basically 12 treble stitches if you're UK, or 12 double crochet if you're in the US. And to start, I do say chain 3 in the pattern, but I like to start with a false stitch, which I'm going to do now, which I also have a video for. Okay, so that's 1. Sorry, it's a little bit splitty working through the camera. 2, 3, 4, 11, and 12. Okay, so now if you're doing a magic circle, this is where you pull it tight. Now if you have chain 3, you'd be joining up with a slip stitch to your 3rd chain, but because I did the false stitch, I'm going to join up to the top of that instead. Oops. Just with a slip stitch. Okay, so there we go. That's round 1 done. Okay, the next round is to do a double crochet if you're UK, or single crochet in the same place that we did our slip stitch. That's the start. So we'll start, insert your hook back in the same place and 1 stitch. Then we need to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Then we need to skip 1 stitch and do a stitch in the next one, and we do that all the way around. So it's 3 chain, skip 1, double crochet if you're UK, or single crochet if you're US, all the way around. Skip 1 and a stitch. 1, 2, 3. Skip 1, stitch in the next. 1, 2, 3. Skip 1. Stitch in the next. 1, 2, 3. And now we should be back to the start. So we're going to join up to that first stitch, just with a slip stitch again. Okay, so we should have 6 stitches, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6 3 chain loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Next round has puff stitches, which may be new to you. They're not tricky. Well, they're a little bit fiddly, I guess, is what they are. The first thing we need to do is 3 chain for our first stitch, or a false stitch if you like to do the false stitch instead, like I do. So there's our first stitch. Then we need to chain 2. And now we're going to do a puff stitch into this 3 chain space. And we're doing a 5 yarn over puff stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull a loop up to the front. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. You see I'm pulling up quite high. 5. Now this is the fiddly bit. Yarn over, and we have to pull through all of those stitches. You notice how I changed my hold. I'm pulling up, I'm pulling down with my left hand and pulling up with the hook on my right hand. And sliding through, wriggle, 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 all of those loops, and then the loop on the hook. And then that's our puff stitch done. Now we need to chain 2, 1, 2, and do a treble if you're UK, or double crochet if you're US in the next stitch. Okay, so basically doing a puff stitch in each of the loops and a stitch in each of the stitches, with chain 2 in between each of them. So now chain 2. Now I do another puff stitch. Excuse me. 1, pull up a loop quite high. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now wiggle, 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 and through that last one. Chain 2, 1, 2, and we do a stitch in the next stitch. Chain 2. I'll just pause it and I'll show you when we're back at the other. Okay, so we're up to our last puff stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull the loop up once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And this is the fiddly bit. So pulling down with my left hand, pulling up with my right hand, and just wriggle that yarn through and through the loop on the hook. Then chain 2, and we're going to join up to our first stitch with a slip stitch. So it'll be the top of your 3rd chain if you did 3 chain, or the top of your false stitch if you do a false stitch. Just with a slip stitch. Okay, so our last round is really easy. All we're doing is doing a stitch in the same place we did our stitch, double slip stitch, a double crochet if you're UK, or a single crochet if you're US. Then we're doing 2 stitches in the 2 chain space. And next we're going to do a stitch into the puff stitch. Now it looks a little bit confusing. What we're going to be doing is doing a stitch into this space, not this space. That's actually the first chain after the puff. So on this little bit on the left, insert your hook there, and then we do 2 into this 2 chain space, and then we do a stitch into the next stitch, 2, 1, oops, 2, now into this space here, which is a little fiddly. Now 2 in the 2 chain space after, 1, 2, 1 here, now 2 in this 2 chain space, 1, 2, now we're going to join up with a slip stitch to our first. And that is it for our first round. Now you need to make 4 of these if you're making the square blanket. If you're doing it in my plan, you do 2 in red and 2 in violet, or you can do them all in the same colour. It doesn't matter. If you want your rainbows to be the same progression, that's fine. You choose whatever colours you want to do. So now we need to fasten off and sew in your ends as you go. You'll thank me for it later. All right. So here we go. Because I started with a magic circle, I've got to be really secure with my weaving away this end. So I'm going to go back. I'm just going back all the way around. This is on the back, obviously. Now I'm going to go back the other way. Oops, I don't want that little thread there. Then I'm actually going to go up through the back of these stitches. I'm just choosing the little back loops all the way up to this nice solid DC round, or SC round if you're US. And I'm going to sew it back through this way. And I'm going to sew it back one more time. Okay, now I'm going to sew in this other end, which is a lot easier when you've got a nice, excuse me, solid round of double crochet or single crochet stitches. Just be careful you don't pull too tight. Like pull it tight but not too tight, otherwise you're going to distort that stitch up the top there. Go around a little bit more. And back the other way. Bit more. Okay. And then I'm going to snip them off. Snip. Snip. And trust me, because we're using lots of colours in this, doing it as you go will be fine. Now don't worry, see how mine's a little bit cut? Don't worry about that. That will be sorted out very shortly indeed. So there you go, part 1. Have some fun. See ya.